A few weeks ago, some boys in Sydney made the headlines around Australia and possibly around the world when they released a video reading out the quotes of teachers and other women in their lives talking about why they need feminism. And I'll just play a bit of what those boys were saying in their video to refreshen your memory about what happened.
To me, because when I was 12, my dad told me I should be ashamed of my body and that I had thunder thighs.
Feminism is important to me because I was called a bitch and a stupid whore by multiple boys when I refused to send naked pictures of myself to their friend.
Feminism is important to me because when I give directions at work, I'm called a bitch rather than a leader, and bossy rather than assertive.
Feminism is important to me because my dad doesn't think I can be an engineer, and my mum doesn't think I can be an economist because that's too hard.
Okay, so enough of that. Well, guess what? There's been an update to the story. A former leader of the opposition here in Australia, a guy by the name of Mark Latham, has come out and made his own comments about this video. I think you might find them interesting. This is from Yahoo 7, playing a clip from Sky News Australia. Let's check it out.
So the boys at the boys' school look like doing their video, total.
Those clips will be there forever.
But they're trying to do their own thing in their own stupid way, and then they get attacked by the girls for being a toxic culture of misogyny.
Toxic misogyny.
I mean, they just can't win. Why would they bother?
Blokes can't win.
They are the damn.
Newsflash, blokes can't win. Right?
Well, I've got to say, Ross, you're very perceptive in the world of romance because you've worked out for those fellas from the Sydney Boys High. They've become undateable because the left women think they're the hopeless, misogynist, toxic culture, and sensible girls out in the suburbs would think they're absolute wallies, and you wouldn't go near them with a barge pole.
So that's Mark Latham there in the middle, and he was the leader of the opposition. He lost an election here in Australia to John Howard, and then he lost the leadership of the Labor Party, or he resigned or something like that. That was quite a few years ago now, but he still gets a gig as a talking head on Sky News, apparently. And you heard what he said there, that the boys at the Sydney Boys High School, because of their white knighting, they're going to find it hard to get a date now because the leftist women don't like them anyway, and the sensible women don't care about them. And whether you like Mark Latham or not, there might be some truth to what this guy is saying. So over the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is go through a few clips and give you an idea of another perspective, because I think a lot of the people who saw my first video on this one, if you go through the comments, a lot of them claim to be boys from the Sydney Boys High School. And there were also comments left by other people who seem to agree with this idea that what the boys were doing was this great thing, yada yada. Of course, my perspective was that the boys were victims. They were innocent victims who'd been used as useful idiots. And I wouldn't blame any of those boys if they're watching this video right now thinking, what are you talking about? We're going to school, we're at this good school, we're doing this great thing, making this video. Our teachers love us and care about us, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand that they're useful idiots. So why don't we go through this little clip show and see if maybe there's another perspective worth considering. There are some people out there who will not listen to other perspectives. And in fact, if it was up to them, other people would be banned from sharing their opinions if it hurt their feelings. If you're one of those people, this won't be the video for you. Here we have your typical normie, and this is probably the response that many people had to my video when they first saw it, especially if they were students at the Sydney Boys High School. They're thinking, what are you talking about? What's wrong with us making the video? What do you mean that we're victims? How are we useful idiots in all of this? What are you talking about? Well, first of all, let me say I know that you guys have the best of intentions. You think that you're trying to make the world a better place by making this video, and you think that by reading out those quotes from your teachers and all the rest of it, that you're helping to end the patriarchy or to fight for equality or any of these things, and you really believe it. You really believe you're doing the right thing, and I know that you do. So that's why I don't see you guys as bad guys at all. Like I said, I think you guys are victims, and I empathize with your situation. George Orwell said that unpopular ideas can be silenced and inconvenient facts kept dark without the need for any official ban. And there are some statistics that I'm about to show you that you're going to find very hard to believe because you've never seen them before. And you'll be thinking, what? If these were true, I'd have seen them before. Why would you have seen them before? Who would tell you these facts and statistics if they go against the agenda and the doctrine that you're being given? School can be a terrific thing, and we can learn a lot of useful information while we're at school, but it doesn't mean that everything that we're told at school is necessarily true. And by spending 10, 12, 13 years of our lives at school, a huge part of our belief system is built by the school. So if you're a prefect at Sydney Boys High School right now, you've been in the school system for how long? 10, 12, 13 years? A lot of what you think about the world has come from school, and so if there are things that they're not telling you, then how would you know? Now, you probably won't have seen anything like this before. These statistics are to do with variables such as the number of partners that a woman has had and her success in marriage. And it comes from a study which looked at these sorts of things a few years ago. I'll link to that study in the info box below. As you can see here, it's very clear. When women get married to a man and he is her first sexual partner, she's got a very high chance of being in a successful marriage. With each partner before marriage, you can see there's a trend here on the way down. And basically, by the time a girl has been with 5 or more partners before she marries you, your chances of being successful with this woman into the future becomes slimmer and slimmer. That's just the reality. Now, this is only one study, but if you've never seen these sorts of statistics before, maybe you've never thought about this before. But what you need to understand is that with you white knighting for these women, and you white knighting for what you think is feminism and equality and all these things, and by tacitly or implicitly accepting the degeneracy that comes with that, you're actually taking part in your own doom. These are going to be very hard statistics to believe. I hope you do go and double check the link in the info box below to the source for this study. Go and check it out and have a think about it. Why are they not teaching you about this kind of thing at school? And of course it gets worse because there's been a trend towards women having more sexual partners over the past few decades. And so whereas when your grandparents or maybe your parents, depending on their ages, were your age, you can see here that back then there were a lot more women who had led lives that were conducive to successful marriage later on. Here you can see virgin at marriage, 1 premarital partner, 2 premarital partners, 4 to 9, and then 10 plus. Back in the 1970s, you could find yourself a woman who, based on the statistics that we saw before, was likely to be part of a successful marriage into the future. Even in the 1980s, there were still plenty of women who had led such a life. But by the 1990s, things were starting to change very rapidly. Then into the 2000s, these women are becoming a minority. And now you're down to a situation where less than 1 in 3 women would be, based on the statistics that we saw earlier, a likely candidate for a successful marriage. What you need to understand is that men and women are different. And you're being told to pretend as though, or to actually believe, that men and women are the same. But men and women are not the same. And you think that by fighting against the patriarchy, you're fighting against these evil white businessmen who are trying to keep Superwoman down, but really what you're fighting against is the family. You don't realize you're doing that, and maybe the people trying to convince you to make these silly videos don't realize that that's the case, but that is the case. To give an example of how different men and women are, look at this. This is what was considered the most important issue for women in the election for that particular poll. This is from 2012 in the United States. Among female registered voters, the most important issue was abortion. It was twice as important in terms of the number of women who reported it being the most important issue as jobs. For men, jobs was the most important issue, followed by the economy and then the federal budget deficit or the balanced budget. So anyone who's telling you that men and women are the same, ask them, do they really believe that? Or can we look at things like voting intentions, voting patterns, voting preferences, these sorts of things and say maybe men and women's brains work differently. Maybe there is a fundamental difference there that no amount of white knighting will ever change. You're being told at your school that women were oppressed back in the past, that your poor grandmother, she was so oppressed by your grandfather and by the system, and that women today are better off, they're liberated, and they'll be even more liberated with white knighting from guys like you. But is that really the case? I mean, if you look at the way that people lived their lives back in the 1950s and 60s, why was it so evil? Was it evil because women didn't go out getting drunk like this of a weekend? Was it evil because they were cooking good meals at home for their families and taking care of the children? Was it evil because one income could support a family back then? Is that what was so evil about it? Maybe try asking your teachers these questions. With all of this extra promiscuity and degeneracy that we see in society today, we also see a lot of other issues that you're probably being told are not issues at all. And if you go on to university, you'll probably be told that abortion is nothing. It's just killing a few cells. Who cares? What's the problem? It's just a few cells. Who cares? Why do you think you're being told these kinds of things? Do you think it might all be related? Is it possible that all this kind of stuff is related? You see, if you do get to university, and most of you young Sydney boys, high school kids will go to university, I would imagine, you'll be surrounded by a whole bunch of young women who've spent the last 15, 16, 17 years watching crap like Miley Cyrus. And so it's not their fault, in a way, that they have turned out the way that they've turned out, but many of them will have turned out completely degenerate because they've spent the last few years looking up to sluts like this. And that's why they turn out like this. This is what you guys have to look forward to. And if you think, oh no, I'm going to get a better girl than this, I won't end up with a completely degenerate slut like this, I'll be fine. If that's what you think, how do you think your daughter's going to turn out? Imagine if your daughter found out that her father, when he was in high school, was talking about how he needs feminism because his dad said that he was too fat and that kind of crap. How do you think your daughter's going to turn out? I mean, you think about the effect that this has all had on your mind and on everybody's mind. This constantly being told that this is evil by school and by social media, and that this is great and this is fantastic, and how liberated women are right now. Can you see that over years, constantly having these images reinforced into your mind, these ideas reinforced into your mind, it might have warped what you actually think is right and wrong? And the poor girls today, I mean, I talk about how they're acting like degenerate sluts, but I feel sorry for them just as much as I feel sorry for you guys, because look at a young girl today and what she's been exposed to. From all of the social media, pornography's become so rampant, many people consider it normal now. In fact, I'm sure there are many kids in primary schools all around the world now who are sharing pornography on their smartphones. And if they're not doing it in primary school, you can bet that they're doing it in high school. We didn't even have smartphones when I was in high school. We still had those crappy little Nokia 9210s, whatever they were called. But even by then, porn was being shared. So what's going on in high school right now, I've got no idea. And these poor girls, they've been subjected to this their whole lives. Of course they're turning out messed up. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh, I would never date a girl like this. I'd never want to be with a girl like this. Well, maybe you wouldn't, but what kind of a daughter do you think you might have in the future? If you're not going to stand up against this kind of crap now, what do you think it's going to be like in 10, 15, 20 years? You want an example of what happens to women when they start getting into this feminist nonsense? Here we've got a girl, Savannah Brown, and she was this wholesome, lovely young lady. And look at that, gorgeous. Give it, what's that, a year? 2 years, not even 2 years, and she's cut her hair, she's all pasty white, and she's making a slam poem about how she's a slut. Is this the kind of girl that you'd want to be with? Is this the kind of girl that you'd want your daughter to be? Really? This isn't happening to all girls, but it's happening to more and more and more girls. They're actually starting to think that it's cool to call themselves a slut, that it's an identity that they want. Is this what you guys are white knighting for? The truth is that a lot of you, just like Mark Latham said, you are going to struggle to get a date. Because a lot of these social justice warriors, they hate you because you're a male in the first place. That's the reality. They've been trained to hate you. And then a lot of women don't really respect men who won't stand up for themselves and won't stand up for others. And if you're reading out quotes from your teachers at Sydney Boys High School, you're not standing up for yourself and you're not standing up for others. You're basically just a cuck, and the girls aren't going to like that. So you're going to end up like this. And of course, you've got your porn, and you might think, well, I've got porn. Who cares? Who cares? I've got my porn. I'll just be a lonely loser jacking off to whatever's on my iPad. Eventually, though, you'll realize that you're all alone. And it's not a good way to be. Maybe you'll get with one of those girls who's already been with 10 guys, 20 guys, 30 guys. Maybe you'll get married, and within a few years, it'll all go to shit, just like the statistics say is probably going to happen. Either way, you're going to end up all alone. You'll end up alone, and you won't have the way that things were just a couple of generations ago. You know, we're told that this is so evil. The happy father, the happy mother, the child. We're told that this is so evil. But men and women are not the same. And the love that a man has for a woman is different to the love that a woman has for a man. This is very hard to understand when you've been told for years and years that we're all the same, we're totally the same, everything's a social construct, blah, blah, blah. But the love that a woman has for her man is different from the love that a man has for his woman. Women and men are not the same. Sadly for you guys, and sadly for me, what's been done to women, a lot of it can't be undone. You know, they've been completely brainwashed, just like you guys have, and they believe a lot of the crap that we've been told as well. Now, I don't expect this video to change anybody's minds straight away, and nor should it. If you've believed something for 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to keep believing it, and one video won't change that. But maybe this might plant a few seeds in your mind, and maybe some of you will go and check the statistics and follow them to their logical conclusion. And if you do, you'll see that you have been lied to by school and by TV and by your teachers, many of whom didn't realize that they were telling lies in the first place. At first, you might go through denial. Eventually, though, when you realize that everything I'm saying is true, it might make you angry. And I'd recommend you try and get through that phase as soon as you can, for your benefit and for others. And you might try and go through some bargaining as well. Well, maybe if I get to uni and I just keep my mouth shut and I go for the right girl, and maybe I can still end up with a half okay one, and And then eventually you realize that that is living a lie as well, and you might find yourself a little bit sad about the whole thing. But eventually, if you stick at it and you stick true to your own values about right and wrong, eventually you'll find acceptance. And I can assure you that as terrible as the reality can seem at times, especially when you're first learning about it, it was tough for me as well. I was learning about some of these statistics just last year. I remember thinking to myself, man, this is bad, this is tough. But eventually you understand, well, this is reality. And whether you like reality or you don't, this is the reality that you live in. And this is what you have to deal with. And you're going to have a much better chance of success in everything you attempt with all of the information at hand. And this video has helped give you an idea that there is other information out there that you should go and seek out, and not just trust everything you're told by school and TV. And with that information, you can improve your life, you can make things better, and you can be happy. Now, it won't matter what you do and what you learn. There will be people around you who will continue to believe the nonsense and live the degenerate lifestyle that they've been told is good and normal and progressive and all the rest of it. But I am telling you, if you want to, you can make a good situation of all of this, but first you need to become acquainted with the facts. So the choice is up to you. What are you going to do next? Are you going to deny everything I've said in this video? Are you going to attack me and say that that there's something wrong with me, I'm a bad guy, I'm a nasty pasty, I'm a meanie, blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to go and check the info box and check the sources for yourself? The choice is entirely up to you, and you get to choose right now what you're going to do next. Where would I recommend that somebody start if they've only just started getting their head around this idea that maybe school hasn't given them the full story? Well, the first thing that is worth doing is learning more about what school is really there for, because that's where a lot of our ideas and beliefs and opinions came from in the first place. So in the info box, I'll link to a guy called John Taylor Gatto. He wrote about the dumbing down of America. This was a very successful teacher in the United States. In fact, he won the best teacher in all of New York, I think it was, 2 years in a row. And he came out and said, look, I can teach kids very quickly using some basic methods and getting them to think for themselves, but the school system doesn't want me to do that. That's not what the school system is for. And then he spent the rest of his life writing about this and giving lectures about this. The fact that schools today are not there to make us smarter, even though we desperately want to believe that they do. So if I were you, I'd go and check out that short video and then go from there. So that's it from me, John LeBon, on the 29th of March 2017. Hope you got something from the video. Leave your feedback in the comment section below. Do go and check out those links in the info box if you dare. And until next time, take care of yourselves.